Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Lidar Greve-Lazian. Coming up in today's newscast. America has voted, electing Donald Trump as the 47th president of the United States. What does a Trump victory mean for Israel and the ongoing war? And Prime Minister Netanyahu fires his Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. What a night and what a day. Israelis woke up this morning to the news that Donald Trump has been elected to serve as the 47th president of the United States. And with this news, Israelis are hopeful to usher in another era of continued strong ties between the two countries, with a president who is remembered for his staunch support of the Jewish state, for moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, Israel's eternal capital, and for promoting the Abraham Accords. After over a year of war, as Israel is on the front lines against a brutal enemy headed by the Islamic Republic of Iran, whose aim is to destroy not only Israel, but all of Western civilization, Israelis are cautiously optimistic that this historic win will help bring about a brighter future for the country, will see the hostages return home, and the region at large. And so we go now live to the United States with ILTV's Emily Schrader. Emily, it was a big night last night. We all watched closely. What's the latest? How's the mood in the United States right now?
Thanks, Lidar. So we are here in California, where we saw Americans queuing to vote in this U.S. presidential election until really the last minute of the polls. Later in the night, we did see that Donald Trump was victorious in the election. However, there were some surprises in terms of the election turnout. The Jewish community is traditionally a strong Democratic voting bloc. However, we saw in this election that 43%, an estimated 43% so far of the Jewish community supported Trump. That's the highest number from the American Jewish community since 1980. In addition to that, we also saw surprising support in turnout from the Latino community for now President-elect Donald Trump. In addition to that, we saw that in the exit polls, whereas economy is traditionally the most important issue to American voters, we saw that the state of democracy was actually listed as the most important concern for Americans, with the majority of them viewing Donald Trump as a better candidate to respect American democracy. The issues after democracy that were the most important to Americans were, of course, economy in number 2, followed by immigration, abortion, and foreign policy only in 4%. This, of course, running in stark contrast to what we have seen from the far left and the anti-Israel groups claiming that the Gaza war is a major issue in this election cycle. Now, that being said, we have seen some protests already popping up across the country. In New York City last night, we saw anti-Israel protesters gathering and burning Israeli flags outside of the Fox News headquarters. However, thus far, we haven't seen any activities like that here on the ground in California. But of course, we'll keep you updated with every event happening here on the ground in this U.S. election. Back to you, Lidar.
All right, thank you, Emily, on the ground in California. And Prime Minister Netanyahu was among the first world leaders to send Donald Trump a message congratulating him for his election as the 47th president of the United States. ILTV's Steve Leibovitz reports.
We overcame obstacles that nobody thought possible, and it is now clear that we've achieved the most incredible political thing. Look what happened. Is this crazy? But it's a political victory that our country has never seen before, nothing like this. I want to thank the American people for the extraordinary honor of being elected your 47th president and your 45th president.
Within minutes of Donald J. Trump's declaration of victory as the 47th president of the United States, Prime Minister Netanyahu became among the first world leaders to congratulate the president-elect. Netanyahu posted, "Congratulations on history's greatest comeback. Your historic return to the White House offers a new beginning for America and a powerful recommitment to the great alliance between Israel and America." Israelis generally celebrated the news of the election of Trump. The news came this morning, Israel time, after major TV networks declared his victory over Vice President Kamala Harris. There were few countries in the world that watched the U.S. election results as closely as in Israel. According to the polls, most Israelis favored Trump, who is remembered for moving the U.S. embassy and promoting the Abraham Accords during his first presidency.
I think it's good for Israel, yeah, no doubt. It's better than Kamala Harris, but it's very good for Israel because he proved the last time he was a president, he moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and everything that he said, he did. Yeah, so it's good for Israel, no doubt.
I think it's going to be a new era for the world, for the Middle East, for Israel. Things going to change.
There are concerns among many in Israel that the Biden administration, while supportive of Israel since the start of the war, also had considerable criticism of how Israel was conducting the war in Gaza. President Biden will remain in office until January 20th, and it's unclear how the election could impact U.S. policy between now and when Trump takes office.
And in an historic comeback, Donald Trump was elected the 47th president of the United States. His win will no doubt have an impact on Israel's security, the ongoing war, and the region at large. Joining us now to discuss what this means for Israel is Ari Harrow, former chief of staff to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Ari, thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Good to see you.
So Prime Minister Netanyahu was one of the first, if not the first, leaders to congratulate Trump in a heartfelt message, which could also be seen as a jab at President Biden. The two had a great relationship during his first administration. Is this the outcome Netanyahu was hoping for?
I think that we can judge President Trump on the first 4 years that he spent as president and the steps that he supported and the steps that he took to strengthen Israel, to strengthen Israel's security and to bring peace to the region are unprecedented. Having moved the embassy to Jerusalem, recognizing Israel's sovereignty in the Golan Heights, bringing Israel into the Abraham Accords and peace in the region are really monumental events that took place. And I think that the Prime Minister, the government, and all the citizens of Israel hope that we have 4 years that resemble that type of unbending support.
And before we talk about what a second Trump administration would look like, I do want to take a moment to reflect on the outcome of the election because, according to polls, Trump received the highest percentage of Jewish support for a Republican in years. And so I want to ask what you make of this sort of historic shift that we've seen.
I think that the last 4 years for Jews in the United States have been difficult years. It started prior to the October 7th tragedy in Israel and the war that followed with anti-Semitism rising steadily, unfortunately, year after year, and then really exploded after October 7th. We saw incidents, we saw the campus protests, we saw really scenes that reminded Americans of history lessons they did not want to be reminded of. So I think that there's no question that that had its effect on the Jewish population, shifting to a presidency that they hoped would bring about a change on that front.
Mm-hmm. And now, regardless of the outcome, there are still a few months until Trump officially takes office. When President Obama left the Oval Office, one of his last acts was to essentially, as some saw it, stab Israel in the back by not vetoing an anti-Israel resolution at the UN. So what can we expect to see now from the Biden-Harris administration during this transition period? They've already threatened Israel with withholding arms. What should we expect now?
I don't expect pettiness from President Biden and this administration. President Biden truly is a Zionist and a supporter of the state of Israel. I think that he would definitely want to leave the global stage knowing that Israel is safe and secure. And I hope and pray that over these next couple months, he continues to support Israel in its right to defend itself and to rid this region and the world of the type of terror that we've faced since October 7th.
Mm-hmm. And what can we expect from a second Trump administration? Will it likely be as supportive of Israel as the first?
I think really the only measuring stick that we have is his first term. And there's no question that the first term was very, very positive. We just discussed that. He still has a lot of good people around him, like Ambassador David Friedman, Mike Pompeo, people who played central roles in the policies towards Israel and the Middle East. And I hope and pray and believe that we will continue to see such support and strength.
And what do you see as some of the major issues that will dominate the agenda with regards to Israel and the U.S. relationship in the first months of the Trump administration?
There's no question that what we have been dealing with here in our region affects mostly us, the state of Israel, but there is a broader concern that the Trump administration is going to have to weigh in on. You're talking about an Israel-Iran war, which is no longer just a hypothetical. And the fact that we have sustained two of the largest missile attacks in the history of the world over the last few months, and the fact that we have taken significant action against Iran. Thank God we've done a very significant job in minimizing the capabilities of Hezbollah in the north and causing severe damage there, taking away one of Iran's proxies. We took away another proxy with Hamas down south. And ultimately, the question is going to be, what do we do to defang Iran and to cut off the head of the snake? How active is the Trump administration going to be in those actions? And the Trump administration is also going to have to look at it from an even broader and more global perspective, taking into consideration the cooperation and the just the connection between Iran and what's happening with Russia, with China, and with North Korea.
So a lot of issues that are going to dominate a second Trump administration. Ari Harrow, thank you so much for your insight today.
My pleasure. Good seeing you.
And more than 2/3 of the Israeli population had been hoping for a Trump win, according to multiple polls, and for good reason. ILTV executive editor Maayan Hoffman will take us back to revisit the actions Trump has already taken in support of the Jewish state and the Jewish people.
U.S. President Donald Trump is considered one of the most pro-Israel presidents of our generation. During his tenure from 2017 to 2021, Trump and his administration implemented several policies to demonstrate their support for the state and its security. Number 1, Trump moved the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, fulfilling the Jerusalem Embassy Act, which Congress passed in 1995, but had been delayed by all presidents until Trump. Number 2, Trump recognized Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights, which Israel had effectively annexed in 1981. Number 3, he announced the Pompeo Doctrine, named after Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, which stated that Israel is not an occupying force in Judea and Samaria, affirming that the area is disputed territory. Number 4, the Trump administration withdrew from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or the Iranian nuclear deal, which experts argued enriched the Iranian regime and enabled its destabilizing activities. Number 5, Trump defunded the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees in the Near East, otherwise known as UNRWA. This organization has been linked to Hamas, particularly in connection with the October 7th massacre. Last week, Israel's parliament passed 2 bills that will effectively remove UNRWA operating in Israel. Number 6, the U.S. withdrew from UNESCO, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, after it issued statements denying the Jewish historic connection to the Temple Mount, among other places. Number 7, Trump signed the Taylor Force Act, halting American economic assistance to the Palestinian Authority until it stops making payments to individuals who commit acts of terrorism and to the families of those who have died in such acts. Number 8, Trump closed the Palestinian mission in Washington. Number 9, he signed an executive order on combating anti-Semitism, reinforcing his administration's commitment to addressing the issue. So, what will number 10 be? After January 20th, Israel will likely find out.
And on the eve of the U.S. election, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu fired his Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. While the two had been at odds for quite some time, the announcement came as a surprise, prompting anti-government protests overnight. ILTV's Ariella Lehiani joins us now with the full story. Ariella, what can you tell us?
Yes, thank you, Ladar. So I'm here now in Tel Aviv in the same spot where just last night thousands of Israelis gathered to protest Netanyahu's decision to fire Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. Now, this is, of course, a very controversial move, specifically during a time of a multi-front war. However, it is no secret that the two have been at odds for many, many months, and this is, in fact, the second time Gallant has been fired. And just as we are seeing now, we saw then many protests erupt across the country. Take a look at more in the following report. In a surprise announcement, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu fired Defense Minister Yoav Gallant Tuesday night, citing a crisis of trust.
בעיצומה של מלחמה, יותר מתמיד, נדרש אמון מלא בין ראש הממשלה לשר הביטחון. ולצערי, אף שבחודשים הראשונים של המערכה היה אמון כזה, והייתה עבודה מאוד פוריה, במהלך החודשים האחרונים, האמון הזה נסדק. ביני לבין שר הביטחון גלנט התגלו פערים משמעותיים בניהול המערכה, והפערים הללו נולדו בהצהרות, בפעולות שמנוגדות להחלטות הממשלה ולהחלטות הקבינט.
The Prime Minister said even though many attempts were made to bridge the gaps, they kept getting wider, adding that this crisis of trust did not allow the proper continuation of the management of the war. Netanyahu announced that Foreign Minister Israel Katz has been appointed to replace Gallant as Defense Minister, while New Hope party leader Gideon Saar would replace Katz as Foreign Minister. Gallant and Netanyahu have publicly clashed for months over the objectives of the ongoing war in Gaza and in Lebanon. During this time, there were multiple reports in Israeli media that Netanyahu was considering replacing him. After being fired, Gallant addressed the country and said he was fired over his stance on 3 issues: the ultra-Orthodox draft legislation, the imperative to bring home the hostages, and the creation of a state commission of inquiry into the October 7th massacre. Gallant ended his televised statement by paying tribute to the IDF.
כאן, במעמד הזה, אני מבקש להצדיע לנופלים ולבני משפחותיהם, לפצועים ולנכים, לחטופים ולמשפחותיהם, וללוחמי צה"ל באשר הם. אני סומך עליכם ואני מצדיע לכם.
And rocket sirens blared throughout central and northern Israel this morning as Hezbollah fired a massive volley at Tel Aviv and surrounding cities. The IDF reported that some 10 rockets were fired from Lebanon into Israel, with the majority being intercepted, though debris landed near Ben-Gurion International Airport. Following the incident, the Israel Airport Authority announced that flights would continue to operate normally. And debris from an intercepted rocket also directly hit a parked car in the central city of Ra'anana. No injuries were reported in the attack. And 2 people were lightly injured in a terror-ramming attack in Judea and Samaria. The terrorist was neutralized at the scene. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, the IDF advanced in South Lebanon and issued new evacuation orders for Gazan civilians. ILTV's Steve Leibovitz reports on day 397 of the multi-front war.
In South Lebanon, the IDF advanced in a targeted operation into the center of several villages after intelligence reported Hezbollah activities there. Forces destroyed dozens of military buildings and eliminated Hezbollah gunmen in direct combat. The Air Force also targeted weapons production facilities. The forces located a tunnel about 70 meters in length that included rooms and an ammunition depot. The tunnel was destroyed. Turning to Gaza, where civilians have been evacuated from Beit Lahia, Beit Hanun, and Jabalia, as the IDF continues efforts to root out remaining Hamas terror cells still operating 397 days into the war in Gaza. In the months since Israel launched a renewed campaign in the border town of Beit Lahia, one of the first targets of last year's ground assault, multiple strikes have killed dozens of terror operatives. The area has been cut off from Gaza City to the south, with supplies of food reportedly dwindling. The army is urging residents to evacuate immediately to designated areas as the IDF continues to operate with Hamas severely depleted, but with total victory yet to be achieved.
And in other news, now I have the privilege of speaking with Leslie Kaplan, the driving force behind the upcoming 3rd annual Jerusalem Business Conference set to take place later this month. Leslie, thank you so much for joining us in the studio.
Thank you, Lidar.
So can you give us a quick maybe overview of what the Jerusalem Business Conference is all about?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you said, it's the 3rd ACI Jerusalem Business Conference. ACI is the Association of Americans and Canadians in Israel, working with all English speakers, not just from the US and from Canada. As you hear, I have an accent from somewhere else, from South Africa. It's the 3rd conference. I've been involved with the conferences from the beginning. And for the 2nd year, we've been cooperating with Nefesh B'Nefesh, where we're having it at their campus in Jerusalem. It's for all people in business, be it entrepreneurs, men and women, solopreneurs, companies, anyone interested in the business scene.
And what can attendees expect to gain from the event? You know, what key takeaways will they leave with?
Will they gain? Okay, good question. They're going to have, firstly, fun. There's lots of networking, connecting, connections, building relationships, and there's fantastic development. I'm a firm believer of cooperating and using conferences also with the development and topics and not just networking. We've got a fantastic lineup of speakers. We've got a roundtable networking session, great booths, delicious food, and basically it's a place you want to be seen if you're in business or if you're thinking of going into business.
You know, Israel's economy has faced some challenges this past year, you know, rising taxes, high-tech professionals, you know, that are in the reserves, dropping credit ratings. How will this year's summit differ from previous years, especially with the impact of the war?
Right, absolutely. Very good question. Firstly, our conference last year was in September, just before October 7th, and we all know what sadly happened on October 7th, when the world changed, when Israel changed, and of course when every single one of us changed, whether it was directly or indirectly. So this year we're building it into our conference theme, especially with 2 out of 3 of our keynote speakers. And the conference is going to be business-oriented, but also with the social side, and obviously taking into account October the 7th. It wouldn't be appropriate or proper to have a conference without taking that into account.
Absolutely. And, you know, most of the attendees at the event will be Anglo immigrants, as you mentioned, from the United States, from Canada, from other countries. What does this event say about Aliyah, about the contributions that the English-speaking community is making here in Israel?
Okay. Firstly, the English-speaking community is making a fabulous contribution to Israel. I've been in Israel now 35 years, almost 3 decades being in business and an entrepreneur, and I've just seen it grow, and the amount of people that are either have their own businesses, are employing other people too. There's a lot of connections, there's opportunities for networking. It's basically not the same as what it was 35 years ago. It's definitely changed, and we're making a huge impact on Israeli society and basically on business and in businesses in Jerusalem and around the country.
Absolutely. Well, Leslie Kaplan, thank you so much for speaking with us today and the annual Jerusalem Business Conference set to take place later this month.
Thank you so much.
Sagot Winery, where passion meets tradition. Nestled in the heart of Binyamin, our vineyards yield exquisite wines crafted with generations of expertise.
And now, let's take a look at the weather forecast. Mostly clear skies are expected tonight around the country, with temperatures reaching lows of around 18 degrees Celsius or 63 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow, mostly cloudy skies are expected alongside warm temperatures reaching highs of about 27 degrees Celsius or 82 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channel, subscribe to our newsletter, and explore our website, iltv.tv. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I am Lidar Gavelazi. Be well, stay safe, and thank you so much for watching.